Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Priceless Podcast. My name is Michael Sechen, and I'm your podcast host. This podcast is made in partnership with the European Forum of LGBT Christian Groups. Please subscribe to this podcast, like it, you can comment, and of course, you can share with anyone you think would be interested in watching this podcast. So today I have two guests and I'm really excited because this is a special podcast and my guests come from Norway and their names are Julie Haas and Hilde Rostad. I hope I said it well. Hello Julie and Hilde, welcome very much to the Priceless Podcast. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing well. We're really honored to be on the podcast. I've been watching several of these and I think it's wonderful. So it feels like a big honor.
And I'm Julie and I'm feeling a little nervous about this. I don't do podcasts very much, although I do speak in front of groups, but my feelings are my feelings and I'm a little outside of my comfort zone.
We have a cartoon. It's character sitting in a lotus position, and over it says, "Today I will live in the moment," which means today we will be totally present for this. And Julie adds what says under, "Unless the moment is unpleasant, in which case I will have a cookie." So we have cookies ready for Julie if she feels uncomfortable.
Perfect. I wish I could take a cookie. I mean, I don't feel uncomfortable. I feel comfortable with you. I'm very thankful that you're willing to do this podcast. Thank you, Julie, that you're willing to do it and share your story, although you feel uncomfortable. And I'll try my best that you feel as relaxed as possible. Let's jump right in. One thing I started to do is just say some words and ask my guests to say whatever comes to their mind so that we get to know you. Of course, you can answer with one word or you can elaborate a little bit to the words. So, are you ready?
We are ready.
Okay, so the first word is identity.
Well, my identity, I would say, is an outdoor person. I enjoy skiing and hiking. I'm also an environmental statistician. I identify as lesbian. I ride shotgun for Hilde, and I think I'm still Hilde's loved one.
Well, you are. And I'm a writer. I'm an activist when I have the energy for it. I identify as a lesbian, and I am also a mountain person.
Faith.
I grew up in the Lutheran Church in the U.S. I think my faith is evolving as I was involved in conservative things when I was at university and have learned that I feel more comfortable in more liberal congregations.
Well, I never went to church much when I grew up, but I have my parents had a very deep faith and belonged to the Norwegian Lutheran Church. But I was a Girl Scout and I was in a youth group where worship and community happened more outside under a big sky than in church buildings. So church has never been my home, but there has been Christian communities that I have belonged to. I'm definitely a faith person, and in contrast, I feel that maybe my faith is becoming more and more childlike as I evolve. Like I'm back to almost my very basic faith from when I was a kid, but it's all these life experiences in the faith, and it's not so complicated. So my connection to God is really important to me. My relationship to the church is not important at all.
I skipped one word because you already mentioned your sexuality, but I still want to ask if you want to add anything to the word sexuality.
Yeah, I do, because for me that has been a very actually traumatizing word. When I was 13, my sister died. And I think that when I was a teenager, my sexuality disappeared a bit in my fear that I too would die. So I closed that part of me off. I wasn't having the teenage traumas of crazy hormones. Then meeting Julie and discovering myself as a lesbian, I discovered a wonderful sexuality. Then I had a really traumatic experience with my parents and sexuality. So I would, if you asked me, say two words about sexuality, it would be wonder and trauma.
And I guess I would say missed opportunities. And I think that's best illustrated when I was talking to my mom when I was 35. She said, "So, Julie, when did you realize that you were gay?" And I said, 25, 26. And she said, "No. I knew when you were 16. And I was like, "Mom, why didn't you tell me?" And she just looked at me and said, "Well, I just don't think you could have handled it."
Wow, that's a great story. I mean, we're going to come back a little bit to your parents and your story with your parents. So the next word is Norway.
Well, it's where I was born and where I grew up. It's a place that I for many years just wanted to escape from, because the situation living here was too difficult and too hard. And I'm trying to reclaim it as a place of belonging, but that takes a lot of hard work from me.
I grew up in Colorado in the United States. So Norway was far away. It was part of Hilde. It has ended up as the place where we could be and be together. And I've managed to find my way here and have enjoyed my career here.
Love.
Well, I have a hearing aid. Sometimes I didn't hear it. For me, love is the most important thing, because it comes in so many different colors and so many different shapes. So when you say love, I can think about God's love for me, but my love for Julie, but also love in community and with friends, and just that deep source of creativity inside me, I think, is the way I experience love, and I can be creative and I see the beauty around me as well. So it's kind of a foundation, but it's not just the love between two people.
I would say I love the mountains. I love nature. I love Hilde.
Was that the right order?
He's asking, not you. So, I don't know what the right order is, but that was the one that came out. Anyway, so nature to me is important, but so is our journey together. And I would say that that's what's bound us together.
And the last word is relationship.
Well, I shouldn't say that, but that's actually a tough one, since we've been together for quite a while. But I would say it's a journey.
It's a roller coaster. It's good on good days. It's
sometimes a nightmare.
Yeah. So, but we've stuck it out, and we've done well together.
I have to ask you, before we go on, if I may, how long have you been together?
We met in March 1983. So in March 2023, it'll be 40 years.
And how did you meet?
For Hilde, it was love at first sight. It took me a little bit longer. We met in Switzerland.
There is this International Girl Scout Center in the Swiss Alps. And Julie was permanent staff, and I came for a vacation, having worked there the year before. And I still remember the first moment because had just arrived and I stood outside the building and this little car drove up and this stunning woman with sun-bleached hair and ski outfit walked out of the car, and I stood there and was like, wow. And I can still describe every piece of clothing she had on, at least the ones that were visible. So it was really love at first sight, and then it took Julie just a few months to follow.
How did you decide to get together? Like, can you elaborate a little bit on your story? Like, what happened?
Julie was working there, and I maneuvered my way in to be offered a 2 months volunteer contract. So we worked together for 2 months. We ended up really clicking. First, Julie thought us friends, and I knew that I was in love with her. We skied together. I think that was the first connecting point, really, that we did downhill skiing together. And I'm a fairly good skier. Julie's a brilliant skier, so on downhill skis I skied behind her, and we were just hanging out a lot. Then at the end of these 2 months, I was going to go back to Norway, and Julie was going to go back to the States for some vacation. And I wanted to have Julie tell me that, yeah, we are in love with each other before she left. We left each other. So I tried kind of saying carefully, isn't this wonderful? And we are more than friends, aren't we? And it got totally quiet. So I felt, okay, I really stepped into it. She's obviously straight with a boyfriend in Colorado. So I said, it is special, isn't it? And Julie said, yeah, it's been really, really nice. But I do this with all my friends. And we hadn't kissed, but we've been holding hands, we've been laying close together, we've been a little bit physical, and I thought there was this huge chemistry, and I was like, geez, she must be having a lot of lovers everywhere. I later discovered that she did not. She was just a little bit shy, just like right now. I'm not willing yet to admit that, yeah, there was this chemistry.
So what do you take as the date when you started or became a couple?
That's a good question. Because, of course, I wanted to have a mountaintop experience as our date. And so we had gone up with randonnée skis to the top of the tallest mountain in the valley, Invincible. And that was the date I wanted, because that was a meaningful top experience. And Hilde said
that that was the time I fell and almost ended in a glacier crevasse and almost died there and got blisters on my feet and was scared the whole time. So when we almost more than 10 years later were doing a civil union, we discussed what date to put in our rings. And Julie suggested this date. I suggested the first night we spent together, which was spent in an igloo. Julie didn't think that was very magic. So in the end, we actually wrote always in our rings because we couldn't define it. And we decided that maybe it didn't have an exact beginning, and maybe hopefully it will not have an ending. So in our rings, it's no date, it says always.
So it's 40 years.
Right. I mean, since we met and since Hilde fell in love at first sight, we'll go with that.
So you started talking a little bit, I mean, you, Julie, mentioned a little bit your parents, but maybe you both can talk a little bit about how was your relationship accepted by your parents, and how was your relationship in general with your parents, considering your relationship?
Well, Julie's mother was always 100% supportive and accepting. I too have a very close and good relationship to Julie's mom. But your dad?
Well, with my dad, it was don't ask, don't tell. After my time in Switzerland, I did eventually go back to work with my dad, and Hilde came and studied, so he knew Hilde really well. But still, it was don't ask, don't tell until it was our partnership time. And I wanted to have my mom come for our civil union. And she said, I don't want to come alone. I need to ask your father if he would come too. So she asked him, have you ever thought that Julie might be gay?
Yeah, can I?
Yes, you can continue, because this is a good one.
Because Julie's then told me they're not going to come. Because it's going to be impossible to tell my dad. And then in the 90s, there was this television series called Ellen. It's Ellen DeGeneres that now has a talk show, but at that point she had a series about a young woman that discovers she's a lesbian and comes out. And by accident, in April of 1997, and we were having our celebration in August, there was an episode that Julie's parents happened to watch together, and it was when Ellen came out to her dad. So they watched this. They didn't usually watch this show. And afterwards, Julie's mom did what Julie just said. She said, have you ever thought about Julie being gay? And her father answered, well, I thought about it. So Julie's mother isn't diplomatic. So she said, yeah, well, Julie is gay, and she's getting married in August, and she wants us to be there. And your dad said,
I need a week. I need some time to think about this.
So one morning, a week later, the phone rang very early in the morning in Norway, and I answered it because Julie doesn't wake up easily. And it was Julie's dad, and he said, can I talk to Julie, please? So I ran into the bedroom and woke up Julie, who's very confused and think that someone is dead. But she does go in and talk to her dad, and I wait outside, and I was like, if he says something hurtful to her, I will kill him. And then Julie comes out of the room where the phone is, absolutely crying. And I was like, okay, I will kill him. And then I said, what did he say? And she said, Dad just said that he loves me, and of course they're going to be there. So they came, and it was wonderful. Yeah, and then it's my parents, which was not so beautiful. I came out to them in 1985 and told that I was together with Julie, and they freaked out. They had been taught by the church that if you were gay and lived out being gay in a relationship, you went to hell. So my mother fought nail and tooth to keep me from going to hell. That included when Julie visited to show up and talk to Julie in a very unpleasant, threatening way. But she also said to me, because my sister had died, and we had always said, we'll be together, see her again in heaven. And so she said to me in a conversation, and this probably reveals a lot of the pain and fear that she was feeling. She said, Hilde, if you are together with Julie, you will never see your sister again. For her, she was facing what she had taught from the church, that I was going to hell. She was very upset and very scared. And the situation with this is where Julie's going to have a cookie. It was really painful, very stressful, and I didn't know how to handle that my parents were so upset. So in the end, I did the most destructive thing I've ever done. I promised them that Julie and I would have a non-sexual relationship. They were thrilled and told me that that's what I had been praying for. And it led to 8 years of really traumatizing time for me, and also of course for Julie and us, because I had to close down the sexuality that I had finally discovered. And it wasn't until 1994 that I realized that this is so destructive that I'm going to be destroyed by this. and that I told them I can't keep that promise anymore. And they told me that they were not very pleased, but they obviously couldn't do anything with it, and they would continue to treat Julie nicely, because they treated her very nicely as long as we were just in a platonic relationship. And maybe in that process, one of the most painful things I experienced, or weirdest things I experienced, was I talked with another person that had been an adult as I was growing up and was a person of faith and very close to me. And I talked about I have to be able to embrace my sexuality and live that out to be a whole person. And he said, I don't understand why. Because sex is so cheap, you can buy it at any street corner. It doesn't really need to belong in a relationship. And I couldn't believe that a person of a Christian faith and a church leader would say that. So that's the most twisted concept of sexuality for same-sex relationships I've ever heard. You can just buy it. I mean, yeah. So it was a very painful thing, and then probably left some scars that won't go away from me and for us, but we did get back on track. So it ended well, but it was pure hell for about 8-9 years, and made my relationship to my parents really difficult, and it's taken a lot of years to heal that.
Yeah, I mean, I can hear how challenging this was, and thank you so much for sharing this. I can hear the pain and, you know, how hard it was for both of you. So I have to ask you, how did you manage to go through this challenging time and stay together?
I think that, first of all, we really, really loved each other and didn't want to lose each other. And I think since we're both like to go hiking and skiing and be in the mountains and in the forest, I think we applied the things we'd learned there, that there are sometimes really horrible climbs and endless stretches that you think I won't make it, but the reward at the end might make it possible. I'm not really sure how we survived it. Maybe it's simply a miracle or a gift, and it cost a lot. But I think the love was strong enough to actually make it through it, but I would not recommend it. I should have said, I'm choosing Julie, I'm leaving. You know, Jesus in the New Testament, in the Gospel, has a very important statement that I think apply even more to same-sex couples that struggle with families and parents, because he said, of course, in a heterosexual way, but he said that a man is supposed to leave his mother and father and stay with his wife. When you choose a relationship, it cannot let your parents or your family or the expectations have the power to have that kind of destructive power. And so if you ever ask me, what do I regret the most in my life? This is my biggest regret ever. And I'm just so thankful that we survived it and that Julie still loved me all the way through this, because it was hell.
Yeah, I can hear what you say, and it's really interesting that you're already giving some advice maybe to younger couples what not to do. And that's great. And I also like what you said, you know, this is your story. There are no recipes for what other couples should do, but it's at the same time so inspiring to hear, you know, how you went through a hardship. And you were talking about 8-9 years, which is a really long time, and it's so inspiring that you went through it together and that you are together. So what are maybe some other challenging things that you experienced in your relationship?
Well, I think one challenge we've had is where to live, because of visa troubles. In the 80s, when Hilde came to the United States, she had to actually answer the question.
Yeah, when the first time I came to visit Julie in this Colorado, I had to have a tourist visa, and there were 3 questions at the end of it. One was, are you a criminal? Obviously, I said no. And then, are you a spy? And I said no. I mean, if you were a spy, you wouldn't say yes. And the last question was, are you homosexual? So it was impossible for us to find a country where we could live together. There was no same-sex marriage, therefore there was no granting of permissions to stay. There was certainly no double citizenship because we were married. And something that people probably doesn't think about now, that when we met, Julie lived in Switzerland and I lived in Norway. There were no emails, there were no Skype, there was no cell phones, there were no texts, there was only letter writing. And I still have this pile of letters that I kept from those 2-3 first years with Julie, because we would write to each other almost every night and send them once a week. But I was still living at home. Julie was living in a place with only one phone for the administration, so we couldn't really talk on the phone. We had sometimes 6 months in between when we didn't see each other, so we wrote a lot of letters. It's really cute because Julie used to write to me at the end of the day in bed, and I would see her writing, and then it would kind of dwindle out because she fell asleep when she wrote to me. And then the next section she said, oh, I guess I fell asleep last night, let me continue. So I think finding a way to communicate at that point in time across borders and across Europe and across to the States was really, really difficult. We take it all for granted now that we can find ways to at least talk or see each other's pictures on the screen, but there was nothing of that. It would have made life a lot easier.
Yeah, and I think one thing that people maybe don't know at that time, telephone calls were extremely expensive across to the other continent.
That's right. So I think that was, and then I don't think we struggled so much with cultural differences until Julie had moved to Norway, because they finally accepted that people could get a permission to stay year by year if they lived together, and then they included same-sex couples in that. And that's why we was like, in the end, this is the only country where we can live. So then we lived here. Julie actually studied and got a whole new career and had a fabulous professional life because of that.
Yes, I mean, I had been working with my father in the States, and then I did my MBA in Oslo, and then I did my PhD in Manchester, and came back and started working at Statistics Norway, doing environmental statistics. And I've been doing that for the last 25 years. So it really gave me a totally different direction to where my career was going.
So while Julie had a fabulous career and traveled the world counting environmental issues, I was stuck in the church. But I think maybe that was something that helped us, that we were very different. And Julie, we could support each other because we weren't necessarily fighting the same battles.
How did you manage to reconcile your own sexuality with your faith?
It wasn't difficult for me at all, because when I met Julie and fell in love with Julie, I'm going to use the same expression that Oliver from Sweden used his interview with you. It was like 1,000 puzzle pieces that suddenly fell together, and I felt whole. and I felt that I was really blessed by God. So I felt that it was just a gift, and because I hadn't been in a very conservative church setting, I didn't have that installed. It's a sin, it's a sin. It was probably also because it was so far out being a homosexual or being gay that we didn't talk about it. So maybe that was a blessing that it wasn't a topic. I mean, when I grew up in the Christian youth group, the discussion was, or the teaching from the leaders was to teenage heterosexual couples, not below the neck and not above the knee. And it didn't even talk about being gay, so maybe that was a blessing. But it was just like it was a gift from God that I was a whole person suddenly. And it was only my parents that, and the damage that the church had done so that people around me found it difficult. I never found it difficult. I always knew that this was God-given, and my love and my passion was as blessed as anyone else's. Of course, as an activist and in the Norwegian church as a minister, I met a lot of other things, but it has never been something I've had to struggle with deeply myself.
I think I'll have a cookie.
Good. Enjoy your cookie while we go on. So, what helped you? You were talking a little bit about your relationship and one of your big challenges of, not consuming your relationship or however you want to call it. But what helped you keep your relationship alive and going for 40 years? We're talking about 40 years. So what do you see as some really important things that keep a relationship alive?
I think one of the things is that we don't get bored with each other. Julie has this wonderful mix of being very intelligent and an absolutely goofy kid. And I think we have things that we really love to do together. And for me, it's so important to know that there is someone that loves me unconditionally. Please say that you feel the same.
Absolutely.
And
I think it's important to be able to laugh together. My parents were married for 50 years, and I sometimes was really annoyed when they would be laughing so loudly in the mornings at breakfast that they would wake me up. And I think that learning to laugh.
It's not a bad thing.
No, that's right.
But I also think that a lot of the times it's been really felt like it's been the two of us against the world. That it's been a battle, and I guess we're both extremely stubborn, so that we're not been willing to give up on something really wonderful, no matter what the cost. And we always know that there is a view at the top of the mountain, or when you cross the pass and you see the other side. It would be stupid or wrong to say that there hasn't been other women that I've and Julie have been attracted to through these years. But I always kind of felt that a life that didn't have Julie in it would be really, really upsetting. So I think sometimes we've had to give each other some space and freedom. But I think under there, I even said to Julie sometimes, I really want to be with you, even when I don't really want to be with you. So it's like this, yeah, I could go off and find someone else, but on the level below that, I just want to not have a life that doesn't have Julie in it. And so I think that's probably what has kept us together. And I can only say that it's a love that's really, really deep. And And as I said, there's been some really attractive women crossing my path, and that's given me both happiness and enjoyment, and we've gone some talked about that. But without Julie, in the long run, I would be very, very lost, and it would be this huge hole in my heart. Do you want a cookie, or can you say that you feel the same?
I can say I can feel the same. And also, I think it's important that we've been able to recognize when life is getting difficult for the other person, that we're willing to be there in the way that they need to be if we can figure that out. There were times when Hilde was very exhausted from her time as an activist, and I just really, needed to pick her up at the airport, and vice versa. When I've ended up with being sick or was in a really hard period at work or was really busy, that we recognize that the other person has times that require all of their energy, and we don't try to take additional energy away, but actually try to support that person, because quite often it's a couple of weeks or a few months or something like that are incredibly intense. And it's not because Hilde doesn't love me during those months. It was just, quite frankly, she was too focused and her energy was going somewhere else. And the same thing for me. So I think we've had to learn how to communicate that we're going to be having a really busy time, or be able to recognize that we're having a busy time and simply say, what do you need today? Can I help? If we are in a place where we can help. When life gets really difficult is when both of us are in busy times or times when we're both struggling. So,
but I think it's an equality thing then, because we can both be the wreck and both be the supporter or the caretaker, and we take turns on that when life is rough, as Julie is saying, and to give each other the space when it's necessary without giving up.
Yeah, what I actually hear is that you both supported each other to be the best persons that you can be, and that you can actually really become the persons that you're meant to be. Is that right?
Yeah, and because we're in many ways very different, we have different strengths. This year has been really hard for me because my mother died, and there's been a lot of practical things. And Julie is really good with those, so she's really been helping me. And if I had to do those, I would probably be in the mental treatment center right now. But I've spent a lot of time, as Julie's mother got older and lost her husband, I would spend a lot of time talking with her about her issues in a way that Julie wouldn't feel comfortable. And then I will say one thing. In the 80s and 90s, there was a television series, was called The Wonder Years, about growing up in the States. But the theme song for it was Joe Cooker's With a Little Help from Our Friends. And I think we couldn't have made this without really, really good friends that's been really supportive and just been there for us. So our friends, both the friends we have together and our separate friends, has been rocks when life has been rough. And they really believed in us and been there for us. So without help from friends, we wouldn't have made it, because we haven't really had support from family. So it's been I'm strong on friends, so family of choice.
A few years ago, I actually saw a documentary and I heard the director talk about it, and she said one problem with same-sex couples and why they often fall apart is because they don't have a system of support like straight couples do. And that is a huge problem, because when a straight couple has an issue, there are all these people that around them that want them to succeed as a couple. And that's often very hard for same-sex couples, because they don't have the same support system. Not that they don't have, not only that they don't have the support, but they also experience that the people around them almost wish they would break apart, they would fall apart. So I see you are agreeing with what this director said. And I'm glad that you said that you had friends who support you, because one beautiful thing that I find with LGBTIQ plus people is that so often they say, this is my chosen family. And this is kind of what I hear from you, that you had your friends as your chosen family who were very close and were supporting you throughout these years. Is that right?
Because, I think for many people, straight people, they talk about what's the safe places in their life, and it's, if they're people of faith, it's their church community and it's their families. And for LGBTQ plus people, church is a very often a very unsafe place. And for many of us, family is just as unsafe and as scary as church, because you never feel safe there, because you never know what's going to happen, and you never, even if things get better, that kind of anxiety and clutch in your stomach when you are in a family setting, it just doesn't let go. So you really need to find other places of belonging. And I think for us to then be moving across continents, we really enjoyed large groups of friends in the open church group in Oslo. And the forum people are really important to me, but those really close friends that are with us and know us from the beginning, they're really the salt of the earth for us.
So you already talked about so many things, and you mentioned many things that you cherish about each other. But I have to, because I wrote down this question, and I have to ask you, maybe there is something that you didn't say and would like to say, what you cherish in having someone special next to you.
Maybe the most important thing for me is to know that there is somewhere where I am. We talk about safe space. Julie is my safest space. And someone who loves me no matter if I feel shitty or having a bad day or a bad week or a bad year. And someone to share the happinesses with. I love that Julie is just who she is, and I wouldn't really change her in any way. And I think that's important too. She's far from perfect, but she's just right for me.
And I think as we've had nearly 40 years together, I don't have to explain some things, or we've been through it together. It was just like, well, remember this, we did this, maybe we could go there again, or let's not do what we did in this situation. We need to choose differently. And it's just nice to also have someone to remember things with.
And I also think that because we have fought so hard to be together, I don't think we have ever, and this is still, I think, the way it is, I don't think we ever take each other for granted, because it's been a battle to be together and figure how to do that. And it's been so much joy in it, but I think when you start to take the other person for granted, it's a treat every day. Still feel we made it.
Yeah, I think what you just said, that is a danger of a relationship, just to take the other person for granted and whatever this person is, and also the qualities of the person that this person brings into our life. I like what you said, that you're kind of, you both have your individualities that you kind of profit from each other in a way. I don't want to put it like an economical agreement, but it is true, to really see, even for myself, from my partner, to see how much I learn from because he's different, and how much he actually brings into our relationship because he's different. Although it can drive me nuts sometimes, but that's often things that drive us nuts are things that help us to grow. That I can grow from because of his differences.
That's right, and I think one of the first things that we struggled was with that. I come from a family and a friendship with my friends that we like to talk about issues and emotional things long and in circles and from this angle and that angle. And Julie doesn't. She played sport and did science. So I had to learn. Julie had to learn to be patient and listen to me talking about things for quite a while. And I had to learn that when Julie lay down on the couch and closed her eyes and asked for a cold cloth on her forehead, it was time for me to say, we talked enough about this, let's go for a walk or do something happy together. So it's about learning to figure out and not just get angry with each other, and that was a learning experience.
And quite often we talk better if we're walking than if we're sitting. And that we've also had to learn, because we need to talk, we need to communicate, but it's also a question of how. And that's not always the same for each person. And we found that driving or walking is good places for us to talk.
Or if there is a view.
That's right.
Yes, that's exactly, just respecting each other for who we are and finding out what is working for the other person and respecting that, and that we function differently. There is always a way that we can find how to get where we want to get to. I hear nowadays, and it's not only with same-sex couples, it's with heterosexual couples too, that it's so hard to keep a relationship. What do you think makes it so hard to keep a relationship? I don't know if I would say especially nowadays, but it seems that way. So I'm not sure statistically if that's right, but what do you think makes it so hard to keep a relationship?
I can't say, at least for same-sex couples, that it's so easy, because it's not easy. But maybe, I don't know, maybe it has to do with there are so many options, and you do get a bit tired of each other now and then, and there are other attractive people around, and you get curious, and meeting someone new always brings new energy to you. At least that is my feeling. So then it's easy to say, well, this relationship has kind of worn itself out, and I'll look for something else. It'd be really cheap to say that people are just giving up too easily, because I think people try really, really hard to keep their relationships. And I think maybe it's not a very easy answer. I think it's individual, but I do think for same-sex couples, which is what I know most about, that it costs a lot to stick together when life gets hard. And I certainly see the temptation is finding someone else, or just feeling worn out and feeling a bit trapped, or feeling like I'm not getting what I need anymore. What I have learned is that, and I think both of us have learned that you need more than one person in your life, not necessarily as a million lovers, but I need other people and close friends that I can do things with that fulfill the needs that Julie actually cannot fulfill for me, and vice versa. There's things that I can't do that Julie loves to do, and she needs to have other friends that to do that with. I have one friend from Norway who's in the forum, and probably lots of people know her as Randy. And she's the one I go dancing with, or used to go dancing with. It should be Julie, but that doesn't match. So sometimes you have to say, okay. And Julie has a couple of friends that she go on long hiking trips with, because I don't like to sleep in a tent and live very primitive. So you can't expect your partner to fulfill all your needs. You need to have other people in your life, and then you have to both accept that that is not a threat to the relationship, although they are really important. Maybe that's one of them.
Yeah, you need a little help from your friends. And I also think that for me, it's sometimes you've got to do the slug uphill in order to get the view from the top. And it's a little bit of the perseverance, and sometimes if it feels like you're in an abusive situation, you just need to get out. But if you are doing okay and life is just a haul, it might be worth hanging in there for a while longer.
We actually took a time out for about a year and a half once, because we stayed together and said we'll be friends and we'll be in connection, but we'll take a time out on our relationship because we were in a bad place. And then we discovered afterwards that it was worth coming back together again, and that's when we did our civil union. So space maybe, and commit. Yeah, I think space.
I think it's also to have an open hand instead of always a closed hand around the person. A little bit of an open hand can be helpful. I mean, when Randi goes out, when Hilde goes out to lunch with Randi, I mean, they start at 1 o'clock and they don't come home until 7. I'm like, that's lunch? But that's those guys. I mean, you know, that's what they do. They just need to have the time together, which is wonderful. You know, I
think you have an expectation that your partner is going to fulfill all your needs, and you, as Julie said, you clutch that person too hard sometimes. But that's also a process of learning to let go, and then maybe someone will stay with you.
Yeah, jealousy can be a hard thing to work through in a relationship, but it's really important to talk about it and just to talk it out and make the other person feel safe, or that both people are safe. And I so much agree with you. It's hard not to grab, especially I think for maybe same-sex couples, because it's so hard to find someone, and then we are prone to grabbing someone. And it can be dangerous. The person can just feel too, I don't feel free enough, or just too much put into a box. So yeah, it's really important to find this balance. And I liked what you said. You know, it's not something. There is no recipe, and it's not something that we can judge others if relationships don't work. I think my question just comes from a place where I see how many people long for a relationship like you have, for this one person, you know, that you can come back at the end of the day and laugh with and cry with and share your day with. And I just wish it would be easier, but I agree it's a lot of work, but it's so rewarding at the end when you manage to work things through and work it out.
That's right. And maybe, and this is a bit of a backwards queer way of looking at it, but maybe because we had to fight so hard to stay together and be together, not because we struggled with the relationship, but all these outside forces, that we really had to trust each other and be a team and belong together and trust that love, because otherwise we would have been ripped to pieces. So something that was really painful and really much of a struggle maybe also helped us feeling like it's us against the world, and then you build a lot of trust and a lot of strength together. Which doesn't mean I would have chosen it to be that way, but when it ended up that way, we fought a battle together. Then you have to, if you're in a battle together, whether it's in a relationship or as an activist, you have to trust each other really a lot.
So we are going towards the end of our interview, but I want to ask you, is there anything that I maybe didn't ask you, but you would like to say or share?
This is probably connected to my parents. At the end, they came to accept and include. My father taught high school geography, physical geography, and he loved maps and he made maps. And he finally said to me, when he talked about my relationship to Julie and our relationship, and he said, I guess it's like when you have a map and you have a terrain, and the map and the terrain does not fit. The terrain is always right and the map is wrong. And I thought it was a very good way of saying life and the relationship and love, that's the real things. And if the rules don't fit that, then it's the rules or the map that's wrong. That's probably the biggest gift I got from my father and the biggest affirmation I got for accepting Julie and me and seeing the wonder of it in the end before he died. I'm not sure that's what you were thinking about, but that's probably my best image of also the conflict between church teachings or theology and life in real.
You, Julie, did you have enough space to say everything you wanted, or is there anything else that you wanted to add?
I'll finish my cookie.
Well, it was really amazing talking to you two, and I'm so thankful with all of my heart that you were willing to share your story, partially your life stories, but also your love story with me and, of course, the audience that is watching or listening to this podcast. So thank you so much for being willing to be vulnerable about your experiences, about some stories, about your relationship, about your love. Thank you, dear viewers and listeners, for being with us today. As I said in the beginning, this podcast is made in partnership with the European Forum of LGBT Christian Groups. Subscribe, like, comment, and share this podcast with your friends or people you might know. And of course, this podcast relies on donations. So if you want to support this podcast so I can continue making them, please do so by clicking one of the links in the podcast description. I forgot to mention that Hilde also wrote a book, and I will put a link into the podcast description. Yes, Hilde is showing the book. So feel free to check out the link, and hopefully in the future I will have a separate conversation with Hilde about her story and her book. Until then, until the next time, I say bye to you, and bye Hilde and Julie, and thank you so much.
Thank you. It was nice talking with you. Thank you. Bye.